Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just taking a couple moments here to let everybody in through to the webinar. And thank you so much for your patience. Just a couple more moments and we'll be ready to begin. All right, wonderful. So welcome again, everyone, to today's online learning session, Capacity Building to Amplify Housing Delivery, Leveraging Best Practices. We're here today in partnership with Purpose-Driven Development. My name is Nathika, and I'm the Education Programmer here at the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded Coast Salish territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples. Our work at BCNPHA takes place throughout the ancestral and unceded territories of about 198 distinct First Nations in BC. I believe it's important for us to acknowledge this resolution simply because it is important to not only have these conversations and take steps towards truth and reconciliation, but also to recognize the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples in these lands and express our gratitude to them for the opportunity to live, learn, and work here. We pay our respects to the elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Indigenous peoples joining us today. I also welcome you all to say hello in the chat and let us know where you're engaging from. I am dropping a link within the chat that helps us all know what territories we are a part of. Beyond that, a few housekeeping items. I would like us all to note that today's session is being recorded. We'll send out a recording to you a day or so after the presentation ends. So in this case, it would be either Monday or Tuesday next week. Should you need any support throughout the session, we're here to help you out. Feel free to send a message in through the chat and we'll do our best. And you are encouraged to participate and engage with us and the content however it best suits you. So whether it's using the chat function or unmuting yourself and asking a question, we'll have opportunities to do both. We will be having different segments and pauses within this presentation where you'll be able to ask questions directly to our presenters, which is a perfect segue into helping me introduce our lovely presenters for the day. From Purpose Driven Development, we're joined today by Carla Guerrera, who is the founder and CEO, and Annalise Vanderveen, who is the Manager of Strategic Projects and Operations. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to them to kickstart today's session.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for spending your morning with us. We're really excited to share some of our knowledge and expertise around how our company, Purpose Driven Development, brings tools that we've distilled from a few decades working in private sector that our team has. To kind of amplifying the delivery of and kind of the approach, I would say, of non-market and affordable housing development. We're really excited to be here with all of you, and thanks for spending your time with us. As as was stated, this is really meant to be interactive. We want to hear about your challenges. We want to hear about your experiences. We want to hear about some of your knowledge and experience as well. So feel free to, in the chat, put that in. And we've got some discussion moments built into the next 90 minutes as well. Okay, next. So in terms of what we're hoping to cover with you this morning, the first is giving you an overview of, why we're here, what our learning objectives are, as well as an overview of Purpose Driven, the company I founded. And we're then going to jump into private sector approaches that we bring to our projects and our clients to amplify affordable housing delivery. And we'll talk through a couple of case studies and outcomes. And then we do have some best practices and takeaways, but prior to discussion. But if we don't get to those, we'd actually rather have time for discussion. So we may or may not get to those best practices. we'll see how it goes. Next. So in terms of the learning objectives for any of you who registered either a long time ago or last minute, we'll just quickly run through those. The first is we're going to go through a framework that that Purpose Driven developed when we started that outlines 8 key pillars and a proven approach to successful development. This is kind of the framework of how we work, how we look at projects, how we look at risk, how we look at capacity building. It's a really powerful framework that we use and like to share with our clients. The second objective is to learn how to apply some of these approaches to nonprofit and affordable housing projects. And we are going to talk through all of this. We are going to talk through all of this about the best practices that come from private sector. We're going to talk quite a bit about financing. Successful projects start with being able to have a strong financing and funding approach. So we're actually going to spend quite a bit of time on that. I do think that is kind of rooted in our private sector experience. And then we'll go through insights on expediting projects through complexities and challenges that many nonprofit and non-market developments face. And then we will talk also about the impact of strategic partnerships with lenders and municipalities in advancing projects. So it's a lot in 90 minutes. I feel like each of those topics could be its own session, but we'll cover as much as we can. So I started Purpose Driven in 2016. I worked very much kind of as a solopreneur until about 2019 when I started to really build the team. And our mandate is if you have land and if you have dreams, we're your team. So next. So I come from over 2 decades in leading some of Canada's top private sector development projects across Canada's top markets. Some very large scale mixed use master plan projects, as well as a lot of infill mixed use projects as well in Vancouver and in BC, as well as in Toronto. And started Purpose Driven in 2016 because I really saw the need for groups, nonprofits, First Nations, churches, institutions, and public sector who have land and want to unlock the full, social, environmental impact of delivering a project on that land, while bringing the rigor of private sector to delivering projects. So really, that was the why behind Purpose Driven, and go through a little bit. Next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annalise Vanderveen. I'm the Manager of Strategic Projects and Operations with Purpose Driven Development. I have been leading non-market projects under Purpose Driven the last 5 years. And my background prior to that was really working with municipalities and regional governments on the governance and housing side of things. And my academic background is in urban planning. So my approach to development and the work we do here is really bringing that comprehensive look at city building across our projects and how we can incorporate best practices from city building within individual developments as well. My current role includes funding and financing as a big piece of that role, working with our partner lenders and funders, as well as with our clients to establish comprehensive funding and financing strategies for all of our projects to ensure success. And I also work on some key development strategy projects and moving more into the operations of the company as well.
Thanks, Annalise. So over the last several years that we've been growing Purpose Driven, we have a really great team of professionals. We're a mix of planners, architects, engineers, civil engineers, and we specialize in delivering the full and we have a series of advisors that work with our company as well. And we really specialize in delivering development projects, and we really specialize in mixed use, mixed income projects for clients. Next. And because we come from private sector and most of our clients are don't do development as their primary business, and we bring that expertise and capacity to them. We have really focused on trying to build capacity with our clients around all aspects of the development and the development process. So we really focus on simplifying the complexity of development, making it transparent versus murky, bringing sort of calm into the chaos of the development process, and also reducing risk along the way. We have a really strong risk lens, and we're really focused on identifying risk early, helping our clients understand risk, managing and mitigating risk. And we think that these things all together help to really fully unlock the true potential of a project and deliver it successfully. So we have over 40 years of collective development experience. To date, we're at about unlocking $180 million in project financing for our clients with the lending relationships that we have. And right now our portfolio is about $2 billion in real estate development, and our pipeline is about 2,200 non-market homes. Next. Next. So in terms of our services, we are a professional development management consulting firm. So we lead all aspects of delivering development projects through all phases of development and construction. We unlock project financing, both pre-development and construction, and have all of the key lending relationships to do that. And we kind of broker those relationships for our clients to get the financing and funding secured for projects. And we have strong relationships with all different types of municipalities, as well as the design teams that we help build those relationships with our clients as well. But before getting into projects that are ready to be delivered, we also have a really strong and deep area of expertise in management consulting. I'm going to start calling it now in strategy consulting. So we do what's called real estate strategy, which is both for clients who, let's say, have a portfolio of land and aren't sure exactly what to do with it. So we'll do a portfolio analysis and plan for that portfolio for each of the projects. But I think even more importantly, sometimes these portfolio analysis and plans get done, but without a strategy about, what are we going to do? How are we going to deliver these? How are we going to choose which sites to move forward and when as an organization? So I myself, and with Annalise also, we actually do a lot of work with clients who have boards or large, management teams that need a strategy for their real estate because, they might have a strategic plan, but they don't have a strategy for their real estate, and it doesn't translate into easy decision making. So we do a lot of real estate strategy work, portfolio analysis and planning in parallel with that. So that's also what we do. Next. And just to quickly go through some of our projects, we really focus on delivering thoughtfully designed projects that are creating inclusive communities where everyone can thrive. And that's our mandate. But you can really see from the design of our projects that, they don't look like, we get told all the time, they don't look like affordable housing. We really want these buildings to look and feel welcoming, inclusive, and beautiful for their lifetime. So that is a big focus on, how we deliver projects with our clients according to their values and their mandate. Next. So a couple of projects we have in our portfolio right now. This is a very large site in Vancouver that is delivering approximately 800 units of not affordable and market rental housing. It's all nonprofit owned. So this is considered a social housing project, but it is mixed income, and it will have some significant community serving spaces as well, and all around an active transportation node. Next. And another project is with Sarah for Women and BC Housing. This is serving women and children fleeing violence in Mission. And that is in rezoning in Mission right now, in development permit stage. Next. And this project is one we have a case study we're going to speak about a little further. This is a project with a nonprofit in Vancouver called Seroptimist International of Vancouver. This project is it's intergenerational housing. So it's delivering housing, intergenerational housing for women. So it's 135 affordable homes that is targeted for seniors and workforce women and women-led families. This project is also unique in that it was delivered by an all-woman team to demonstrate the leadership of women where they're unrepresented in development and construction. And this project is really interesting in that this client came to us with a parcel of land, an aging building, and no money at all. So we were able to work with all of the lending relationships we have, and we secured $85 million in financing and funding to deliver this project, which is now in construction. And we've had lots of wins along the way with this project being rezoned at the City of Vancouver also in 7.5 months. So not without its challenges, but we're really happy to see this one, well underway into construction now. Next. We also do a lot of First Nations work, both with nations on the housing side, but also with nations on the economic development side. So nations who have land and are looking to unlock their land parcels and assets for, long-term economic sustainability and economic reconciliation. We do a lot of that work as well. Next, we can just keep going. Yeah, just more projects. We can keep going, Annalise. Great. So in terms of what we're really focused on speaking about today, we really want to bring to you some of the kind of tools and in our toolbox that we bring to delivering projects to help really amplify the delivery of non-market housing. So next. So first of all, we'd like to have some discussion that can be either through raised hands and people speaking and or comments in the chat. But we really, before we start kind of diving into some of the approaches and methods and tools, we really want to understand from you, how is your organization currently delivering projects, assuming you are delivering projects? So what's your delivery model? Who is delivering them? Are you delivering them internally? Are you delivering them with an external team? Who is delivering them, meaning managing them, managing the development of new projects? And what is working about your delivery model and how you're delivering new projects? And what is not working about your delivery model? So if anyone would like to share what their organization is doing in terms of delivering new projects and what's working and what's not, we'd really love to hear from you. Or put it in the chat. Anyone?
And I just wanted to jump in as well because there was a request for the slides to be shared as well. So we're happy to have those sent out following the session. I believe those will come directly from Natika.
And if folks are more comfortable to just raise their hand and then go, oh, there we go.
Hey, Leslie.
Hi, I'm actually a local elected in Nelson, British Columbia, so a rural area. And what I found with projects that are being delivered by not-for-profits in our small community are that they're completely dependent upon government funding. And I'm very interested in finding out what alternatives to that look like. So I don't know if that's it sounds like that's what your organization does, which is why I'm here today. And it's something that I'm interested in know is, have you worked outside of sort of major metropolitan areas on a regional basis in a rural place like Nelson is?
Great. Yeah. We do have a whole section to talk about like one of our models, and we will get there because we have a whole section. One of our models is that we also believe that to have a a sustainable portfolio of housing delivery, we cannot be exclusively dependent on governments because they change and shift and priorities change. And, I started working in housing at CMHC when I was just a baby, and there was no money for affordable housing delivery. Like, we were doing research and sharing research and knowledge, but there's no money anywhere for housing delivery at that time. So we think it's really important that, when we look at how projects are funded and financed, that we think about it in a long view and we really think about it from a sustainable delivery lens. And so we will get there in this session today. And yes, we do work in smaller communities. We have several projects on the island outside of metropolitan areas that we work in. And so, yeah, we'd love to chat more about Nelson and what kind of support the organizations there need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about, these questions? Any other comments? No. We're happy to hear the challenges too, because we all deal with challenges. So, okay. Well, if anyone has other comments or questions, we will look at them in the chat, but we'll just keep moving. So this first kind of set of tools in the toolbox is really around risk, and development involves risk. And what we find with our clients, we're working with a diocese right now that has 60 different properties, but even working with clients who just have one property, we as the non-market sector are pretty risk averse or can be risk averse, and development involves risk. So a lot of what we do with our clients is like getting people used to understanding that every step in a development project involves some element of risk. It's unavoidable. But we also can manage and mitigate risk by understanding risk. And then when we understand risk, we can know how to manage it carefully and proactively. So it's really about getting comfortable with risk, but also kind of building some capacity around how we identify, understand, manage, and mitigate risk. So this is all absolutely fundamental and key to success. This is how private sector leads projects. They're very risk tolerant. And I think the non-market sector, would really benefit by developing some capacity and kind of a deeper understanding and comfort around risk, because it's always inevitable to project delivery. Next. So we created this diagram to help our clients understand risk as one tool. And so I want to spend a few moments here talking about this. So basically, in terms of delivering any kind of project, whether any kind of physical built project, there are three things going on from the start of the project to the completion of the building and occupancy. And this kind of risk profile, so there are three things going on. There's risk, there's cost, and there's value that's created. And so when we start a project and it's just an idea or a gleam in someone's eye, right where that cursor is, the risk is very, very high because everything is unknown. Like, the technical issues are unknown, the municipal issues are unknown, the approvals are unknown, the financing is unknown, design's unknown. Every single thing about the project is unknown, except it's an idea. It's a bud somewhere. And at the same time, let's say it's a piece of land that's vacant. There's no value. It's zero. It's whatever the value of the land is. There's no increase in value. And at the same time, there's no cost involved because it is just an idea. No work has been undertaken. So as we move along the project delivery timeline, which is this bottom time and information, as we move along the project delivery time frame, as we undertake the work that is required to complete a project to a completed building and move through the development and construction process, what we're doing is we are de-risking the project. So each report, each study, each hole that's drilled on the site, each conversation with the municipality, each conversation with the lender, every design meeting that's held with the architects or the engineers, each step along that process is creating some level of increased certainty on the project. And some level, as we increase certainty, we're decreasing risk. And as we're increasing certainty and decreasing risk, we are also creating value. Those two things together create value. So each step of the development process is creating value, is reducing risk, is creating certainty. And so what's really interesting about this and helps our clients get some comfort is that most of the costs involved with delivering a project are relatively low up until we hit a pretty big risk mitigation point in the project. So, we can look at this kind of intersection here of risk and cost, the green line. We can look at this intersection here as the rezoning moment. The moment a project is rezoned. So up until rezoning, we're not actually spending a significant part of the budget. It's still a relatively low kind of percentage-wise of the budget that gets spent up until that point. But that is a really critical moment in the project that reduces its risk, creates enormous value at that moment because risk is reduced, while still relatively being low in the output of cost or cash for the project. And it's really not until that moment that any of the hard costs on the project or any construction activities start to happen. So at that point, projects can more easily secure financing. At that point, they can move into construction. And at that moment, costs start to go up exponentially. We have a project right now that, every day it's delayed on site, it costs like $10,000. So the risks become very relatively low at that moment, but the costs are exponentially higher. So when we look at this with our clients, it helps them kind of understand risk, understand the risk profile, and understand that like taking these early steps on projects to advance them actually are, they feel more confident to be able to do that when they understand risk and cost and the intersection of risk and cost from this lens. I think the other really important thing to note is, we always tell our clients that if we undertake the work required to significantly de-risk the project to get to this intersection of the blue and the green, which is, we usually look at this as municipal approvals, our client can actually, if they don't want to proceed with the project or something changes or they can't secure financing, they can always, sell the project to another nonprofit or a government agency or some other group if they don't want to carry the project forward. But even if they did it at that point, they still significantly increase the value of the site, so that they would get a sort of return on that investment, even if they didn't deliver the full project. So this is a really important kind of framework to understand risk and understand certainty and value creation and cost as a profile over a project delivery cycle. So I'm wondering if this is a moment, Annalise, were we going to pause and have questions here, or was it later?
It's later, but I think if anyone has a question, we should absolutely open it up, either in the chat or if someone wants to raise their hand.
Yeah, wondering if anyone, has experienced this or if this is landing. Does this make sense? Is there questions about how this works in project delivery? Is it clear? Okay, well, let's keep going. So the other tool in our toolbox that we created because development was so lacking in transparency. Coming from private sector, no one really wants to give their tools away in their toolbox. Private, in my experience working in private sector, people sort of want to make development seem really hard and lacking in transparency, because there's a bit of an upper edge in having that be your knowledge and not sharing that. So I really wanted to, when I started Purpose Driven, flip that on its head so that we can bring a way more transparent and open way of understanding development to our clients. And so we created a framework, which is our 8-pillar framework for successful development. And next, Annalise. And we really like this framework because it's a powerful tool to build capacity with our clients. It's a powerful tool to help our clients understand and manage risk, as well as ourselves as the development lead understand and manage risk. And it's really helpful for kind of project management as well. And it actually used to be 7 pillars, and I added an 8th last year, and I'll explain to you what it is and why, because I think it's very insightful for all of us working in this space. But really successful land development or project development is, I think it's akin to kind of weaving a tapestry. So you have these many different threads, and these threads all need to be managed and skillfully woven together to create a tapestry to ensure overall success. So if you're creating a tapestry and you're only working with like 2 or 4 of the 8 threads, it's not going to be a successful tapestry. It's going to have holes and all kinds of problems. So this framework is really meant to help people understand that like each one of these 8 pillars is critical to be advancing in the right way. And what's really interesting is we've used this framework to unlock projects that have been, stuck for decades, as you'll see later. So it's actually a really powerful diagnostic tool as well if projects aren't moving forward or keep getting stuck somewhere. So I'll spend just a moment going through each of the 8 pillars to help us all kind of build our knowledge and understanding around what it takes to create a successful project. And also, I'll share with you what the 8th pillar was that we added last year and why we added it, because I think it's also very insightful. So these are in no particular order. And this is kind of purpose-driven framework that we developed. We've never seen it anywhere else, and we're really proud of it. And it's a great tool to how we work. The first pillar, again, in no particular order, but if we start at the site conditions, constraints, and costs, one of the things that needs to happen within a project is we need to understand, what are the issues on site that could be a constraint to redeveloping a site. And then what are the costs of those constraints? So we really need to fully understand all of that. Sometimes those can be poor soil conditions, there can be contamination, whatever the things are that we can determine kind of early and understand the costs and constraints and how that impacts a project is key. The next pillar, if we're going around the wheel here, our framework is we really need to understand the market conditions and dynamics. So, if we're talking about non-market housing, there's not a lot of study of market conditions that needs to happen because we are in a housing crisis, and that housing crisis necessitates housing for many different groups. But we could look at this as, potentially a housing needs assessment that needs to be done to really understand who needs housing, what kind of housing do they need. But really this applies more to if we're doing, let's say, a mixed income project and a client wants to cross subsidize the housing with, let's say, commercial space. So they want some revenue generating commercial space to cross subsidize the housing so that, they can be less dependent on government subsidized funding. So in that case, we'd really need to understand like what are the market needs and demands for the various components of, let's say, retail or office or retail or office space, like what's needed in the area. So market studies and understanding market conditions and dynamics for that kind of any kind of use that isn't non-market housing is really key. And community and stakeholders. So we all have heard of projects that have not proceeded because of, let's say, NIMBY opposition. So this can, break a project if it's not managed well, and risk mitigated. So we have a pillar that's specifically about, how are we thinking about the community? How are we thinking about the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders? And coming up with a whole process to make sure that risk is managed well. And then the design and program pillar is really all of the city approvals takes place here. This is, the bulk of the soft costs happen in this pillar. Architects, engineers, landscape architects, structural engineers, working with the city through the design and entitlements process to get to construction all happens in this pillar. And then our construction pillar, looks at all kinds of issues like who is the construction partner? How are they being selected? What are construction risks? What kind of escalation are we considering? What access to labor or other supply chain issues? So all of those considerations and risks get managed in this pillar. And then the pillar we're going to talk about today is also really significant. So financing and capital. We, spend a lot of time in our projects really thinking early about how is this project being financed, who's paying for it, and what's the financing strategy. And we work to help our clients establish that early in the process. And then governance and decision making is our new pillar. So this again used to be 7, added it as 8 because what we realized is we can get all of these right in how we deliver projects and be managing them. But if our clients don't have an effective governance process or aren't expeditious enough, let's say, or clear enough in their decision making, that can also make a project fall apart. And we all have probably had some kind of experience with that in organizations we've worked with or worked for. So this now is a central pillar that is around client governance, how they govern themselves and make decisions. And we really help our clients with getting kind of squeaky clean in that area to make sure the projects are successful that they want to do. And then the final pillar is creating a clear and comprehensive long-term vision for the project and doing that early, making it comprehensive, making it clear. And in fact, we actually use this 8-pillar framework in our early strategy and visioning process so that we're looking at each of these areas so that we do have a comprehensive vision that the project can be delivered by, and all decisions can come back to those early priorities that are set in that process. So it's really part of the, I would say, foundation of how we work. Next, Annalise. Oh, great. Okay, so that was kind of us going through some of the key pillars, the key foundation elements of, how we lead projects and, what the way private sector looks at project delivery and how we've sort of crafted our own tools to bring those approaches and perspectives to non-market housing providers. So I would love to see if there's any questions or comments on either of those tools or about the tools or any of the content we just covered.
Again, feel free to use the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves and jump in or raise a hand, that's fine too.
Or share your perspectives even. No, no one. Okay. Okay. We'll just keep going. Oh, is there a message in there? You're welcome.
Yeah, just a comment from Leslie, thanking you for laying out the process clearly.
Oh, great. Thanks, Leslie. And we would love to, Anna, talk to your nation as well. Thank you. Thanks, Christina. So this really goes to, I think it was Leslie, or Leslie, is it Leslie from Nelson? I think this really is going to be a section that answers Leslie's questions in quite a bit of detail. So I'm going to kick this off and then Annalise is going to take it over. Um, but one of the things that we've really learned in, the growth of our company and just the landscape around funding and financing with all of the lenders that we work with, um, is that everything changes all the time. And for our clients who, sometimes a project can take, 5, 6, 8 years. Um, or they have a portfolio and they want to create a strategy for their real estate portfolio to sustainably deliver continuous housing projects. But trying to do that in a landscape where um, governments are changing, priorities are changing, the approach to housing is changing. It is almost impossible, in fact. So instead of being sort of like left to the whim of whatever funding windows are open or closed or not, we really believe that, we need to look at the delivery of affordable housing in a way that is almost as I will say, like as independent as possible from the program of the day. And if the program of the day, we always do a financing scenario with the program of the day, but if it's not available, that the project works and can be delivered under multiple other scenarios. So we really call that sustainable portfolio and project delivery. But it does all start with how you approach funding and financing the projects, and that conversation, needs to happen at the outset of starting a project. So, Annalise, do you want to take this section away?
Yes, thanks, Carla. So before we jump in, we wanted to just get an understanding of what some of your current challenges to project funding and financing are. So again, if you want to share anything in the chat or raise a hand and jump in here, that'd be great. We'd love to understand kind of what's working, if there's examples of really successful projects or funding and financing partnerships that you've experienced or seen, and also what's not working. What have been some of the key challenges for projects that maybe you're involved with or you've seen in your communities?
Yeah, and I think just to echo what Leslie had already said, what she talked about is absolutely a very common challenge with a lot of the clients that we work with is, they're kind of stuck on some funding and financing program and it comes and goes and it's not necessarily sustainable. So that is a very common challenge, but I'm wondering if there are others that people have experienced or are experiencing and want to share. And if not, we can just keep going, Annalise, and share the strategies.
Again, I'll just jump in quickly with one other thing, Carla, and that's something your pillar that you just added around governance and decision making. So when I started this role with the city a couple of years ago, the two nonprofits that operated the most housing units in our community did not have capacity to do anything further. So through a couple of different things and some governance changes, um, that made a significant shift in what they can do. And now they both have projects moving forward. So I think it's something originally I did not understand well because we have another project that, as you say, has been stalled for, it's got to be between 8 and 10 years because the board who owns that land and wants to do something does not have the capacity to move forward. So a critical piece from my perspective that I didn't understand until recently. So thanks for adding that pillar, and it's pretty critical to moving these projects forward.
I so appreciate that. And it is critical because you can have experts leading projects that are doing everything else right. But if that doesn't work, then the whole thing, it's like a house of cards. It comes down. And, we've worked with clients where, the project, everything's set up. They've got the financing, they've got the consultants, we're the development lead, everything's moving, the city approvals are in place. But they can't make decisions in the time frame the project requires, and they end up in the decision making loop, and literally the project cannot proceed, and so it all falls down. So that's happened a few times in work we've done with clients, enough that we now take that on to help our clients understand those challenges and help like retool around, their decision making, at least around their projects, right? Like we don't do that for their organization, but when it comes to like who's leading the project, they need to have a really effective way of decision making and how they're reporting and how they're making decisions and timeliness. And there's a whole set of challenges around that within this sector in particular. I think that is can be debilitating sometimes. So yeah, relate very much to what you've just said, and it's great to hear that you've got some organizations in your community that have like solved the problem.
So there's a couple other comments, Carla, in the chat. Maybe I'll just read them out for everyone. The changing costs how do you get through a project financially with a contractor declaring bankruptcy?
Oh,
That is
wow.
a big one.
You know what, Patty? I'm like happy to have a conversation offline with you to understand more about that. I think it depends on like what the role that contractor is playing on the project and what the contracts look like. But certainly if we can help, we can share our contact info and have a conversation with you about how to move that out of that rut. That's a challenging one for sure. So yeah, let's follow up on that.
And then next is from Christine, the changing costs in building supplies from planning to delivery phases, adding way more money to overall costs. How do you plan for this?
That is such a good question, Christine. We just went through this on a project of ours. We tendered it last spring and had all the financing secured from multiple different lenders and funding. It was a mix of funding and financing. We tendered it we're actually working with like a really great general contractor, like very experienced general contractor, and they tendered the project. And this was spring 2023. And by July 2023, concrete costs had gone up 250% by the time we had secured financing like earlier in 2023 to when the tender came back a few months later. And we had to literally go into crisis management because we had now tendered a project and we didn't have enough financing secured for our client because of cost escalation. It was concrete and it was also earthworks. The price of earthworks in 2023 went up exponentially. So we did a whole bunch of things. We pulled the consultant team together with the general contractor, together with ourselves, and we spent months kind of value engineering the project to get the cost down. So we took a cost reduction and value engineering approach, and it was an all hands on deck, very intense, several months to do that. And then the second thing we did is because we had built really strong relationships with the lenders and they were very invested in the project, we started working with the lenders to help them understand, where the costs had escalated and what we were doing to kind of strategically mitigate the problem that had been created through these escalation in costs. And so it was both through working really closely with the lenders, helping them really understand where the costs escalated. And we secured more financing through that process, together with value engineering and getting the costs of the project down as much as we could. So we took kind of two strategic approaches. We got the budget down $10 million and secured a bit of extra financing, and we were able to get it into the ground. But yeah, common challenge, really difficult. And I think it's being upfront, strategic, like working really hard on both the cost reduction and the relationship with the lenders side of things.
And then we have another comment and potentially question is from Max. A huge issue is not only the funding potentially not being reliable due to changes in government, but grant providing institutions often have major requirements to be able to even get your foot in the door. So often they have to turn private just because they have lower bars to jump over. That is definitely a common challenge. We see securing grants with organizations and kind of on behalf of clients and working with clients on meeting compliance and reporting requirements. It is a significant amount of work and capacity required. That's a service that we actually provide on our team, is supporting our clients work through kind of that capacity required and the amount of work it takes to be compliant with some of those requirements that are in place. So it's definitely a challenge we've experienced quite a bit. Carla, anything to add to that one?
No, I think that's a good point. I think the only thing I would say is, thinking strategically about, can you structure your projects in a way that you're not kind of reliant on, government funding that changes when governments change. And we have this whole section is about how to do that and strategies. But that's our approach is like funding would be nice. And if we don't get it, we still want to be able to deliver the project. So what's that look like? And we always make projects scenarios that work for multiple financing scenarios. So yeah, hopefully get some insights, Max, in this next section.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your comments and questions.
Yeah,
Super valuable.
They're very relatable. You're not alone in these. They're very relatable.
So now jumping into funding and financing. So we really take the approach that if you want to have a sustainable project or a sustainable portfolio, the way that you approach funding and financing and bringing that together for projects, individual projects or across your portfolio, that matters. So we work very closely with our clients to showcase and bring forward strategies where we're not putting organizations or projects in a box. So we really encourage, and the approach we take with our clients and in our projects is to plan, program, and design them for multiple funding and financing scenarios. So again, we've talked about the changes that can happen with government, the extensive requirements. So we will go through kind of our strategy and how we keep these projects planned and designed so that they can meet multiple scenarios if changes need to happen during the project, the course of the product delivery. So we develop financing strategy and financial models that work across those multiple scenarios. Mixed income affordable housing, from our perspective, is the best approach to creating a sustainable portfolio and sustainable product delivery. And a couple of reasons why include that a wider range of funding and financing programs and financing is available for mixed income rental housing projects. So there are a wider range of lenders out there for mixed income projects versus more deeply affordable subsidized projects. And also across a individual development or across an entire portfolio of buildings, a mix of rent levels really enables that cross subsidization within either the building or across the portfolio. And this is a key piece of helping to attain and retain that long-term financial sustainability.
Can I jump in on this a little
absolutely.
bit? So when we lead projects, we're doing a financial model or a pro forma. And what that pro forma looks at is, first of all, the projects that we're talking about are independent living projects. So supportive housing are a different category of projects. And from a funding and financing lens, they're completely different, right? Supportive housing, any kind of supportive housing has to be funded, right? or independently like capital has to be raised independently by the nonprofit. So your options for supportive housing are only being completely dependent on government to deliver supportive housing, which is desperately needed and essential, or you're doing your own capital raise. So what we're talking about is different. We're talking about projects that, can be delivered through a mix of financing and or funding. And those projects, when we look at them as a mix of rent levels, we can typically structure these projects so that the costs can be covered by the revenues. And if we can get the costs covered by the revenues, that means you can get a debt coverage ratio of 1.0, which is what the many lenders require in order for you to get financing. And if you can show that the rents and the revenues from the project cover the costs, then you can be delivering the project independently from government and you can have a sustainable portfolio. But you have to, and the mix of income on the housing is the way to do that, because you might have some rents that are, at or close to market level that can subsidize the deeper subsidies or the, mid-range rent levels in the project. And so it's through this mix of, different levels of rent that we can create a financial model that we can take to lenders to get the project financed. And we always pursue also funding, all available funding. But if we don't get the funding that is available, whether it's through CMHC or BC Housing, if we're not eligible for the funding or it's dried up or the program's closed, we know we can still deliver the project because we can get it financed. So Annalise is going to talk about who all the lenders are that we work with, but this is really, if you want to become detached from, being reliant on government funding, it's through creating mixed income affordable housing that you can create a financial model that has a DCR, debt coverage ratio of 1.0 or above, that can get financed from multiple different lenders. And, that really is the key of creating a sustainable portfolio if you want to, not be reliant on BC Housing or CMHC. Next.
So the key strategies that we're going to walk through in this section start off with the power of partnerships. So partnerships are super critical, super key to delivering projects successfully. Our approach is to map out the potential lenders and their value propositions, also what their priorities are at the very early stage of development. We engage lenders early in the pre-development process to share the project vision and the viability. So we really look to bring our potential lending partners and funders on board early and walk them through the project and bring them along through the phases of the project delivery so that we're building that trust and collaboration. And also so that we get input, insights, questions, and comments from our lender and funding partners so that we can ensure that the project is able to be flexible and have that flexibility to meet different lender and funder priorities. So one example is bringing on early partnership as one of our key projects. Optimist House in Vancouver. We engaged Van City and CMHC really early on in the project. And met, regularly with these partners, and we were able to align the project within their priorities. And that enabled us to go to them at key points within the project when there was either a need for a quick, cash flow fill because of unexpected, increase in municipal fees, and secure some capital funding in a grant from CMHC when we got to the capital financing stage of the project. The next is really around stacking financing and structuring projects for success. So project success from our perspective really depends on how it's structured, what the program looks like, and the financial modeling for the project. So again, like we've talked about, we develop financial models with a varied affordability levels. So we're testing out, early on in the project scenarios that look at different rent levels, how that can relate and connect with the funding that may be available, but also the lending requirements. So again, we typically test multiple scenarios and look at if something should change in a program, what are the other options, and what the rents might need to look like to pivot a project to a different lender down the road. And this really ensures financial sustainability despite any funding challenges that may come up through the course of the project. An example here was mixed income development. So looking at the affordability tiers, so we were able to deliver deeply subsidized to below market units and gain financing from multiple sources. So this was a combination of government grants and social equity lenders to make this product successful. Now, navigating lender requirements in affordable housing is not easy. There are a range of lenders and funders, all with slightly different or vastly different requirements. One key piece in priority is affordability, but there's also other priorities that lenders have, including sustainability, energy efficiency, and accessibility requirements. And these are, as many of you know, not the same across the lenders and funders out there. And so our approach at the beginning of every project is to make sure that we're clear on all the current lender requirements. And again, it's key to keep up with kind of the changes in these programs to make sure that projects are able to keep these requirements in mind as they're moving through that design, planning, and programming phase of the project. And this is how we're able to match, specific project elements with lender priorities, and then engage the lenders throughout the process to gain their feedback and ideally exceed their expectations. And this, again, sets projects up for success should additional capital grant or financing be required due to, for example, changes in cost due to concrete escalation. So one example of this was with a BC housing project where we've incorporated green building practices that really meet the lender criteria, and we were able to attract additional sustainability grants for this project. And maximizing value through affordable housing development is key. And by value, we do mean both financial value, but we also mean social value. So again, lenders are looking for this social and even environmental value for projects that they want to support. So we present a clear value proposition to lenders and also to city officials. So municipalities are also, looking more and more to see that social value and what projects are delivering for communities. So another aspect of making sure that programs and concepts for projects are able to be set up for success is making sure that they are aligned with city policy goals while maintaining the affordability of the homes that we're delivering. So this really is about leveraging those policy relaxations that are in place for organizations and development that is advancing and achieving city policy goals and goals that the city has outlined, that they want to see delivered across their community and municipality. And this enables us to secure some relaxations for approvals and cost reductions. And this can take many different forms across many different municipalities. So an example of kind of negotiations with city includes increasing the density, reducing parking. This is a key area that we've seen, over the past couple of years, and very recently, with certain municipalities removing the need for parking across the board for different developments. In some municipalities, there are significant parking reductions specifically for projects delivering affordable housing. And optimizing the setbacks for the sites. And being able to deliver that 100% below market rental units at a range of affordability levels, meeting, lender, funder, and municipal affordability requirements and targets is really key to making sure that you're able to secure those reductions in parking or increases in density that create and expand the project's viability and the ability of the project to remain flexible throughout its delivery. And the final strategy is really about future-proofing affordable housing projects. So again, all of these strategies that we've talked about are super key, and it's all about ensuring that there's flexibility. So again, we've talked about the unpredictability of financial landscape. So programs change, lenders change, and their priorities change. And so we are regularly throughout the project from concept to the kind of construction start, we're regularly adjusting financial models for these economic changes. So, as soon as interest rates are changing or a lender has changed in either a sustainability requirement or an affordability requirement, we are rerunning those financial models to ensure that our projects are still achieving viability, or to see if we need to pivot in a certain area of the project to retain that flexibility as we move forward, to make sure that we don't have to see those projects get shelved. And this includes diversifying the funding sources. So again, looking across the board at public and traditional financing, looking at social impact lending and funding, which is growing sector right now. And also looking at green financing. There are programs and financing out there that are looking for those sustainability outcomes. And this, an example of this in terms of restructuring financing is really looking at stacking pre-development funding and keeping financial models for different capital financing scenarios up to date throughout the project. So again, we may be targeting the preferred option, but we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the other programs and lenders to make sure that we can pivot if needed. And this is really about, the end result is reducing financial risk, especially against unpredictabilities such as interest rates. So at a high level, we just wanted to run you through some of the current funding and financing that we've secured on some key projects. And this is not an exhaustive list of programs and funders and lenders. But these are some of the key ones that we've had success recently. And again, that have come in to the table with some really great grants for some of our projects. So through concept feasibility and pre-development, Van City Community Foundation and Federation of Canadian Municipalities have some grants and lending available that's really key to help kickstart projects. And their priorities center around affordability, but also around energy efficiency and targeting, specific populations or communities that are needing affordable housing. Through development, we have Van City Community Foundation. We also work with Van City Bank. BC Builds, which is a new program opened this year, provides pre-development and development funding and financing for projects. CMHC, through their SEED program, provides some great contributions and when that's available, and also lending for projects to get through that program and planning in early municipal approvals phase of the project. And then BC Housing as well. So BC Housing has a range of programs and lending available, and they have a pre-development fund that is open and available for projects targeting a range of their programs and lending options. And then for construction, there's quite a range out there, including traditional financing through banks. But for projects that are looking to deliver non-market and affordable housing, we really target, Van City, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who again has a focus on energy efficiency and sustainability. CMHC, which has quite a few programs. Their programs, range from targeting apartment rental construction and affordable housing to providing some more market targeted programs as well and lending. So CMHC has a range of lending options there that are really key, and we apply to our projects to see kind of the range that's possible for each project. BC Housing and Sacha, which is a social equity investor as well, they can come in potentially like sometimes a little bit before construction and during construction, and they're really looking to support projects that are delivering affordability, see them get built. Again, BC Builds. And then a key piece is also exploring and working with municipal government and regional government on securing any grants that may be available for affordable housing, but also securing fee waivers. So development cost charges and development cost levies, and sometimes also community amenity contributions are all, fees that typically municipalities require of development projects to pay as they're moving through the development and construction process. And many municipalities have programs available that waive these fees. And this is incredibly impactful on especially non-market and below market housing projects, because that can be millions of dollars that we suddenly don't have to worry about trying to secure financing for. So on a recent project, for example, this came out to about $3 million, which was incredible and was really helpful in achieving viability for that project. And I'll just say the key piece for leveraging these funders and lenders is really that the clients that we work with, the nonprofits, municipalities, have land. And it's the land that is the mechanism by which to leverage and unlock these loans and grants to create viable projects. So these lenders and funders are looking for the land to be put into the development project as equity to leverage the ability to access these loans. So with that, I'd love to open it up to questions. I saw some things come through in the chat, and happy to have anyone unmute or raise a hand as well.
So the questions, Annalise, are, Anna was asking about what kind of information is required for the lender's package. And so I just clarified what that looks like. And then Jackie talked about the Ready, Set, Build program with Van City or BCMPHA. I thought it was Van City. Okay, maybe it's both of you guys together. Awesome. And then, Anna said, have you worked with Habitat for Humanity? No, we haven't worked for because Habitat for Humanity, they're an ownership model, so they're actually not eligible for any of these financing programs we're talking about. These are all targeted to rental. It's all rental housing. So Habitat is a bit on their own in terms of, I think they do their own capital raising, as I understand it, for their projects. They raise their own capital, they build projects, and it's all ownership model. So we know Habitat, we love Habitat, but yeah, doing any housing that is owned under these programs, they're all rental. They're all focused on rental, multi-unit residential. But yeah, any other questions?
And I just want to jump into Carla just with a time check. I think we have about 10 minutes left. Is that right, America? Great.
Yeah,
so awesome. So the next section is really around how these approaches work in practice and outcomes delivered. And then I think, like we said at the front end, we'll talk about some of those best practices through the case studies, but we'll probably forego that section today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Great. So how do these approaches work in practice, and what kind of outcomes get delivered? So we'll just go through a couple of case studies to demonstrate how this works in practice. These approaches we've talked about. So the first case study we're going to talk about is a Sir Optimist house. This is the project that's delivering intergenerational housing for women by an all-women team. And it is mixed income housing. So Annalise, yeah, okay. So the project is at Cambie and Marine in Vancouver. So it was actually a really tight urban site with an aging building that had actually 21 elder, like senior, very senior tenants ranging in age from about 55 to 90. Um, the tenants all also had to be relocated and are being offered housing back in this building. But the client that we've been working with for a number of years on this project is called Seroptimist International of Vancouver. And their mandate is really to improve the lives of women and girls. And they had that mandate, but they didn't have, they had this, their mandate isn't really housing. They just happened to the original founders had originally bought this parcel of land in Vancouver, interestingly, at a time where women were not allowed to have mortgages. So they were very industrious women in the 1960s, and they purchased this property and have been operating it as a seniors rental housing project. So the building's, very lots of maintenance issues, very aged and not well maintained. So it was costing them a lot of money. They wanted to look at redeveloping this project, and they hired us to undertake a real estate strategy to help them get clear on a vision and priorities to deliver this project. So we took our 8-pillar model that we had actually just developed at the time of this project, and we applied it to the discussion with the board. And we came up with a really comprehensive vision of the approach to financing and funding and delivery and all of those things. But we also co-created this vision, which is to deliver intergenerational housing for women, so seniors, single parent, single moms, and workforce women, and to lead the project by a team of all women from across development, design, and as much as possible construction. So we're really excited to say, like, this many years later, this project is well underway in construction, fully financed and funded. Next. And next. And it will be delivering 135 new non-market rental homes with a mix of affordability. It has indoor and outdoor amenities, a lot of space for social inclusion and social connection. The entry is a large living room where people can connect and build relationships and have kind of informal social connections. There's also a shared rooftop patio and large outdoor amenity space kind of on the roof, as well as in the back of the building as well. And the rental structure is deep subsidy, rent geared to income, and low end of market. So we were able to get some big wins on this. So expedited approvals with the City of Vancouver in 7.5 months, municipal and regional fee waivers of $3 million. Again, a shout out to municipalities. They all should be doing this for affordable housing, for non-market affordable housing. And then we successfully were able to relocate 21 senior women. And we've actually, since this project, spun off a tenant relocation arm of our company to do more tenant relocation work. Next. So the project is well underway in construction, and Annalise is going to talk about how it was financed and funded. Next.
Great, thanks. So to walk you through how we achieved funding and financing for this project, it definitely was a challenging one and complex. So kind of highlight the reasons why. So the total project cost for this was about $83 million. We, Purpose Driven, are the development lead, and we worked with a range of lenders and funding partners. So we worked and are working with BC Housing, the City of Vancouver, CMHC, Vancity, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And this was really critical to, again, engage all these lenders and funders up front to be able to bring them in for support as the project needed during the concept and feasibility stage, the pre-development stage, and the development stage of the project to make sure that the project could continue advancing successfully into construction. So this shows a bit of a breakdown about approximately how much was secured for each of these phases of work. So under concept and feasibility, working with Van City and Federation of Canadian Municipalities through both concept and feasibility and pre-development phases of work. Through the development phase, that's when we really tied together a number of lenders and funders. So working with Van City, CMHC through their seed program, through both grants and loans that we secured, as well as working with BC Housing through some PDF loans that were advanced for this project. And this project we actually did submit under the BC Housing Community Housing Fund program and was successfully awarded that. And so we were able to secure a significant grant from BC Housing through their CHF grant program of about $14 million, as well as the construction lending through BC Housing. But in order to really achieve viability for this project, we brought all the lenders together into the construction financing and lending as well. So we were able to secure a City of Vancouver CHIP grant, which is the Community Housing Incentive Program, of about $6 million. CMHC came to the table as well to support the project through under what was previously the co-investment program for a grant of close to $10 million. And then again, as we mentioned, City of Vancouver came in with about a $3 million waiver as well on fees and charges for the project. And so this is how we were able to move this project through from that early concept feasibility when, Sir Optimist had the land, but no money, through to now being a fully financed and funded project that is well into construction. And we have a completion date in 2026.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'll say is I know this looks complicated in terms of a financing strategy, and it is. But the fact is we could have delivered this project in a lot of different ways. So it's not like this project sort of like required these people at this level, right? Like when you look at like a financing strategy versus just being dependent on government funding or government programs, you're running, the financial model in ways that work under a number of scenarios. So this is the way that ended up working for this project, but there's another way it could have been delivered, maybe with just financing from Van City or just financing from CMHC and less contributions from these other groups. And so, I think really one of the big takeaways today is when you're looking at creating a project, look at it under multiple scenarios. And if the governments come through and funding and financing on your applications, then great, but have a backup plan that you can deliver it, even if they don't. And that's kind of how we work. That's the approach that we take. And that is very much a bit of the ethos of our company.
Right. So with that, Carla, we're wrapping up here with about 2 minutes left. So I'll just pull up the end slide, and I'm just taking a quick look at the chat to see if we had any other final questions or comments that anyone had.
Yeah, and certainly any questions or discussions that you want to have with our team, we're very, very excited to connect with anyone who wants to connect about any of the material we've talked about, or has questions that we can help support on any challenges that you're dealing with. We're kind of here to support the sector and delivering amazing projects. That's what we do. That's why the company was started. So please reach out.
We do have one final question there from Jenny. Do you do any assessments post-construction to see how the building is functioning?
Yeah, we have a whole post-construction process that is, looks up for deficiencies and does a whole handover process with our client. So yes, we do have a full process that we do once construction is completed to make sure completed as planned and that there's a, really smooth handover process to our clients.
And I would also just add to that with depending on the lender and funder partners as well, who are you're working with on projects, that is also tailored to specific outcomes and targets that development projects are aiming to achieve. So there's a series of assessment and reporting that kind of continues beyond project being completed and occupancy achieved, that we work closely with our clients to make sure that that's set up and able to continue beyond through operations.
Thanks, Carla and Annalise. And one final question from Kyla. Do you work in building design to foster community within the building?
Yes. I mean, we've done whole presentations on our projects where we talk exclusively about that. Yes, 100%. And that for our current projects and for the Seroptimus project in particular, creating spaces for social connection and social inclusivity were a top priority. And there are so many ways that that was done in that building that make it very unique. So yeah, that's a whole separate topic that we really do spend some time focusing on in our projects. So 100%.
And we'd be happy to share that link to that webinar specifically as well. I think it's available on YouTube for
Yeah.
Kyla after.
Yeah, we did a webinar on that with Hey Neighbor and Happy Cities recently. Yeah, so we can share that.
And Nadine asks, how are you addressing the smaller square footage for suites due to costs with livability and quality of life for tenants?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge challenge. I don't think our unit sizes are smaller than sort of standard, but we're in it from our lens, we're in a housing crisis and we need to deliver projects and costs are at an all-time high. And so our priority is always like delivering as many homes as we can to address the housing crisis. And we really do focus on layout and storage and making the units and layout as livable as possible within those constraints.
Amazing. And I think that is about all we have in the chats. On behalf of all of our learners today and BC Future, thank you so much, Carla and Annalise, for coming here, sharing your expertise with us. And we'll definitely send out, with your permission, your emails to our attendees so that they can reach out, and the slide deck or any other resources that you may have. And to everybody else, thank you so much for attending and being such an engaging audience. We look forward to hosting you again in future webinars. And I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend ahead. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.